Hello, I'm Arman Arutunian. These are events, football players, matches that define the football industry. Things without which it is impossible to imagine football and even more difficult to understand. Today is 2011.
Squads in riot gear firing tear gas and rubber bullets.
We don't like Manchester City.
Here we go.
Manchester United 8, Arsenal 2. Away from 2, 3, 4. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Wayne Rooney out of this world!
It's Barcelona's fourth triumph, their third in the last 6 years.
Suleiman. 46-year-old descent of the band, billionaire, senator from the Republic of Dagestan, Suleiman Kerimov, in 2011 bought the Makhachkala football club Anzhi and turned it into a top club in the Russian Premier League for the next few seasons. In the Russian football industry, the signing of Schalke and Udinese by Zenit came as a surprise. And why say anything about Anzhi, a team from one of the poorest regions of the country? The Dagestani's first transfer window was fiery. They invited 37-year-old legend Roberto Carlos and Belgian league star Mubarak Boussoufa. But the next transfer window turned out to be even more incredible. Yuri Zhirkov from Chelsea, Balázs Djudjek, Christopher Samba from Blackburn, and goalkeeper of the Russian national team Vladimir Gabulov was signed. But the cherry on the cake was one of the best footballers at that time, a nominee for the Ballon d'Or, a two-time winner of the Champions League, Samuel Eto'o. Of course, he came not for the sake of the culture of Makhachkala, but for the sake of very clear, greedy goals. And no one really got into the culture of Dagestan, because the football players live in Moscow and only went to the Caucasus for games. The new coach, Gus Hiddink, who was very well known to Russian fans, also received a good salary. He received more than Guardiola and Klopp. Willian and Lassana Diarra were invited in the next transfer window. In total, Kerimov will spend, according to various estimates, $500 million on the project. Inside Russia, the team's results skyrocketed. Anzhi only recently returned to the elite and was able to take 11th place. But already in Kerimov's first season, Anzhi took 5th place. And the most memorable game was the match against CSKA on October 23, 2011. The score of the game was opened in the first minutes by Eto'o. But then the capital team showed the class of the game, scoring 5 goals. The Dagestanis were able to reduce the gap to 2 goals at the end of the game and received a simple, spectacular defeat instead of a shameful defeat. But they were spectacular victories under Kerimov. They defeated all the grands: Lokomotiv, CSKA, Krasnodar, Spartak, Zenit. But the strongest defeated opponent was Liverpool in 2012. In Europe, Anzhi's results were also unexpected, as was Anzhi itself at that time, and the victory over Liverpool was a great note in that short-lived Dagestan football composition. UEFA didn't allow Anzhi to play on their home field due to their lack of suitable infrastructure, so Kerimov's team had to host guests in Moscow. In the game against the Merseysiders, only 1 goal was scored. Lassina Traore scored it in the 45th minute. In the Europa League, having passed the first round of the playoff, Anzhi lost in a hard fight against Newcastle. The following year, Anzhi, coming out of the group with Tottenham and defeating Genk in the first round of the playoff, lost in the last 16 to AZ Alkmaar. Next season, Anzhi decided to strengthen again. So they bought well-known to the citizens of Florence Alexander Kokorin, Igor Denisov, same lover of money, and Alexey Ionov from the Kuban. But soon the growing problems within Anzhi's team, problems in Kerimov's other businesses and unsatisfactory results relative to his expectations led to a new development strategy for the club. Many stars were sold out, salaries were reduced, and funding dropped from $180 million to $50 million. Kerimov didn't pay attention to the construction of a strong academy and infrastructure. The club didn't have a long-term strategy, and the billionaire himself didn't have long patience. He had already lost a lot of money on this project. In 2016, he got rid of the club, and in 2019, Anzhi, suffering from financial problems, got relegated from the Russian Premier League immediately to 2 leagues below. And as a result, there is nothing left of the Superclub in Dagestan. Emptiness, like a burst soap bubble. The lack of attention from fans and media in lower leagues allows players to behave more freely. So, in February 2011, in the 5th division of Argentina, a fight broke out between Claypole and Victoriano Arenas. The result was a record 36 red cards. The game between teams from the same province was hard. So by the second half, the referee sent off 2 players. At the end of the match, Claypole won with a score of 2-0, but the most interesting thing was ahead. Because a fight started, provoked by a player from the losing team. All field players, all reserve players, coaching staffs and fans participated in the confrontation. An unusual but fair result was 36 red cards, which were shown to all the players announced for the game. Thus, the record of 18 years ago set in Paraguay with 20 red cards was broken. Such is the temper in South America. In January 2011, Chelsea made the most expensive purchase in England at that time, buying Fernando Torres for £50 million. In 3.5 years, he proved his worth. But at the end, Chelsea will make an expensive mistake and Torres' career will decline. Torres' performances for Liverpool became the epitome of the English Premier League of the late 2000s. Torres played superbly and scored 81 goals during his time on Merseyside. 7 of those goals have been scored against Chelsea in 8 matches. Therefore, the purchase of the Spaniard wasn't just an acquisition of a cool player, but also a cessation of suffering from Fernando's goals. It didn't work out to buy Fernando the first time. Liverpool was offered £40 million, but the Reds refused. After 4 days, Londonese offered 50 and Torres moved to the Blues. The first match for Chelsea was a match against the former club, and it seems as if they cursed him for betrayal. He scored his first goal only at the end of April. It was his only goal for Chelsea in the 2010-11 season, for which he played 18 matches. Then things were no better. Torres had a goalless streak even longer, from the end of September 2011 to the end of March 2012, 1,537 minutes. There were also terrible mistakes and in addition just terrible quality of the game. But despite this, Fernando won several significant trophies, one of which was the Champions League Cup in 2012. This success wouldn't have been possible without his already folklore goal in added time against Barcelona in the semi-final.
This could be the most dramatic story of the season. It's Torres to give Chelsea a place in the Champions League final. The headline has been written.
Unbelievable! Unbelievable!
Go on, Suarez! Make a name for yourself!
The Russian owner of Jewish origin wasn't satisfied with Torres' low efficiency and the Spaniard was sold to Milan. After that there was his native Atletico, but Torres could return to his Liverpool state only for very short periods of time. On February 27, an owl landed on a pitch in Colombia during the match between Atletico Junior and Deportivo Pereira, which is already unusual. But soon such a rare event turned into a negative side. So during the pass, the Atletico players hit the bird and it became sick. The referee stopped the game to help the owl, but no sooner had staff arrived to the animal than Deportivo footballer Luis Moreno kicked the owl so it flew 3 meters away. As a result, the bird will die and Moreno will become an object of harassment. The bird landed at the 74th minute and during the broadcast you can see how the ball hit it. The referee stopped the match so that the staff would help the bird. But the video clearly shows how a Panamanian football player approaches the owl and kicks it without emotion as if it was a can from soda. The situation was aggravated by the fact that it is the owl that is the symbol of Atletico Junior. The whistle started from the fans and the Atletico players came to sort it out. Later, Moreno will say that he did it based on emotions, and there is a reason for this version. His team was losing at that moment, but on the other hand, the act was reckless due to the fact that the bird would have been taken out of the field in 30 seconds, so it won't hurt the game, especially since there was a lot of time until the end of the match. But he kicked the owl and it got painful shock and damage to internal organs. The bird was taken to a veterinary clinic, but it died in a few days. Luis received a hell of threats to deal with him, public and media harassment, and as a result, in the same year he returned to play in his motherland. This event was the beginning of the decline of his career. And it is a lesson to other football players that it's important to think not only of the reaction of the referee and opponents to your actions, but also to the fans and the media. He was physical perfection and he seemed like a mythical figure. I love Messi. I played many times with Cristiano and I adore him. Neymar is outstanding. Ronaldinho was exceptional, but if you put all of them together, you might get what Ronaldo was that season. These are the words of Quinton Fortune about Ronaldo Luis Nazario de Lima in the 1996-97 season. One of the most talented players who will suffer from injuries and excess weight throughout his career, will write himself into history as one of the greatest strikers in football. The phenomenon, as he was called, was born on September 18, 1976 in Rio de Janeiro. He started in futsal but then began to combine it with big football. But in the end, because of his great success in big football, he chose the latter. At the age of 17, he won the World Cup, thereby repeating Pele's record, despite the fact that he didn't play a minute at that tournament. His first club was PSG, where he showed in his first season that the Eredivisie wasn't his level. Then in his career they were top clubs: Barcelona, Inter, Real Madrid, Milan and Cruzeiro, where in 2011 he finished his club career. In total he scored 352 goals in 518 games for the clubs. His playing style was mesmerizing. Tricks, speed and ball control. The ball was practically sticking to his foot. Even though he was overweight, he could perfectly choose a position and fill the game. In the 2000th year, he received his most serious injury. In the match with Lazio, he broke his knee. It was very painful even for those who just saw his torment. After all, it was not just a cruciate ligament rupture, but literally a broken kneecap bone. After this injury, his career didn't decline, but after it, his style of play changed to a more pragmatic one. He finished his career in the national team in 2011, and Brazil, which always had a lot of talent, shouldn't suffer from his departure. But in fact, they cannot find a replacement even so far. Wagner Love, Luis Fabiano, Pato, Neymar, Luis Adriano, Fred, Diego Tardelli were attempts to replace the phenomenon. Now there are Firmino, Richarlison and Jesus, who are good, but in terms of scoring qualities compared to Ronaldo, they are not so good. After his career, he went into business and opened an agency office. One of his clients is Neymar. Also, Ronaldo participates in many football events and also owns controlling stakes in two clubs, Real Valladolid and Cruzeiro. Football advertising is a genre of advertising from which it's not that boring, but on the contrary, you want to re-watch them yourself. One of these is an advertisement for Pepsi with Beckham released in 2011. In the first commercial, David accepts the challenge of a fan behind the scenes that he will put the ball 3 times in the bin from a long distance.
You think you can get that trash can over there?
Yeah.
Really? Come on. No!
The reaction of the operator himself was interesting.
Yes!
Colombian actress Sofia Vergara also took part in the second advertisement. According to the plot, she is supposedly dying from the heat and Pepsi can save her. But unfortunately, there is a long queue for a drink. In order to destroy the queue, she spreads misinformation on social networks that allegedly Beckham is somewhere nearby. The plan works, but in the end, it comes as a surprise to Vergara that her misinformation wasn't a lie at all.
What's going on over there?
Having come to Schalke in 2009, Felix Magath gave an excellent result in his first season, taking second place in the Bundesliga. The following year Magath will fail in the Bundesliga, but winning German Cup and having reached the semifinals in the Champions League, Schalke will become one of the discussed teams of 2011. The team from Gelsenkirchen at that time played a young Neuer, who will be bought by Bayern immediately after this super season. Angelos Charisteas, Benedikt Hjovades, Joel Matip, Ivan Rakitic, a very young Julian Draxler, and Jefferson Fofana, known to Lokomotiv fans. But the most important creators of success were Klaas-Jan Huntelaar, who moved to Germany after the failure in Milan, as well as Raul González Blanco, who was rudely and stupidly kicked out by his native club Real Madrid. There was a very big drop in the Bundesliga. If last year the Knappen took second place, then this year they suffered 16 defeats and ended up in 14th place. That is Schalke style, to perform an amazing season and fail the next one. But Schalke's results in the German Cup were completely different. Having experienced problems with Nuremberg in the quarterfinals, Schalke advanced to the semifinals. In the semifinals they met with Bayern, which they beat 0-1 in an away game with the help of Raul's goal. In the final they played another upstart of that season. Schalke's opponent was Duisburg. But the Zebras, the nickname of Duisburg, couldn't oppose anything to the team from Gelsenkirchen and lost with a crushing score of 5-0. Another success of Schalke was the victory in the German Superclub over the principal rival, Borussia Dortmund. The main and extra time didn't show goals, so everything was decided in a penalty shootout, where Schalke didn't make a single mistake with 2 from Borussia. But even despite the trophies, the most memorable performance was in the Champions League. The group turned out to be easy. Lyon, Benfica and Hapoel from Tel Aviv. Schalke came out of the group and met Unai Emery's Valencia in the last 16. The hero of the tie turned out to be Fafan, who scored 2 goals in the second game and made the score 3-1, and the sum of the 2 matches 4-2, because the first game ended in a draw. In the quarterfinals, Schalke met Inter, who were trying to defend their title that season. But there is nothing left of Mourinho's former team. Inter were terrible defensively and conceded 7 goals in 2 games. Schalke missed goals speak more about their attacking style of play. In both matches, it was clear how the players of the German team were bullying the current champion. And even the magnificent saves of Julio César couldn't help from all the goals. But one curious moment was at the beginning of the first match, which perfectly embodies Neuer. Going to approach the ball, he left the goal empty and Stankovic scored from a long distance into the goal where there was no one. Alex Ferguson was present at the home match against Inter, who obviously came to analyze a potential opponent. And most likely his analysis turned out to be very good, because after reaching the semifinals, Schalke met Manchester United and could not oppose the Red Devils team with anything. The tie ended with a score of 5-1, and that ended the beautiful story of Schalke with a sad ending. Lego doesn't produce football-themed sets often. The peak period of football-themed Lego was the beginning of 2000s with sets with Zidane. And then the Danes didn't release anything for a long time and delighted football fans with a Lego minifigure of a soccer player in 2011. The minifigure has all the usual attributes of football players: shorts, a t-shirt with a collar and sponsors on the kit. The sponsor of his club is the Octane Oil Company from the Lego universe, but thereby emphasizes the arrival of oil money in real football. Also, the minifigure has cheekbones and fashionable hair, another stereotypical but a truthful attribute of football players. The football player has a silver award in the form of a microfigure for some merits. The colors of the uniform, blue and white, resemble Deportivo La Coruña, Deportivo Alavés, Porto or Brighton. Having coped with the financial problems with the arrival of Watzke, as well as with the problems associated with the results of the team, Jürgen Klopp took the trophy in 2011 when Borussia became the champion of Germany. Watzke invited a charismatic coach in 2008. There is an opinion that other clubs didn't want to take him because of his untidy appearance, unkept stubble, and temperamental character. But in fact, he has an explosive character, which at first glance may hinder effective interaction with others. But as the practice has shown, his character, interaction with other players, and a vision similar to Watzke for the development of the club only brought warmth to the team. And not only to the team, but he also has a special way of interacting with the mass media.
We speak constantly.
And
Pep Guardiola is coming.
And with the referee.
I zapragnął wytłumaczyć coś sędziemu technicznemu.
Jakby chciał zjeść tego technicznego Jürgen Klopp.
Trudno powiedzieć, co powie...
The main tactical idea of Jürgen is gegenpressing, invented by Ralf Rangnick, the tactic in which a team, having lost the ball, immediately tries to get it back, rather than retreating back to regroup. Commenting on his pressing tactics, he said that the best moment to win the ball is immediately after your team just lost it. The opponent is still looking for orientation where to pass the ball. He will take his eyes off the game to make his tackle or interception, and he will have expended energy. Both make him vulnerable.
The counter pressing makes it exactly the same. So you win the ball back in a high on the pitch, and you are close to the goal. So it's only one pass away from a really good opportunity most of the time. And that's why I said, okay, no playmaker in the world can be as good as a good counter pressing situation.
The tactic requires great amount of speed, organization and stamina. It also requires high level of discipline. The team must be compact to close down spaces for the opponent to thread passes through, and must learn when to stop pressing to avoid exhaustion and protect from long balls passed into the space behind the pressing defense. When the coach came to Borussia, it was an average club with difficult financial situation. There was no money for expensive transfers and large salaries. Therefore, Jürgen began to build a team from scratch, began to rely on vertical football and trust the young. The main characters of that team were young Hummels and Subotic as centre-backs. Hummels had a great first pass, efficiency, good one-on-one play, discipline, great head play. A legend, Roman Weidenfeller, played on the goals. In season 10-11 he conceded only 21 goals and performed 14 clean sheets. Bundesliga title in 2011 was his first title ever. At that time he was 30 years old. He had a crazy reaction and could save when his players threatened their own goals. The leaders in the attack were Götze and Lewandowski, forming a powerful attacking duo that everyone in Germany were afraid of. Their combination brought a total of 23 goals. On the way to the title, the Schwarz-Gelben defeated its main rival Bayern Munich 2-0 at home and 1-3 away, but the most memorable victory was the victory in the final of German Cup 2012. The first goal came from a mistake by Luis Gustavo, who sent the ball to Blaszczykowski, who assisted Kagawa. Then Robin equalized from the penalty. Then, in the same way, Hummels, surprisingly, it was he who shot the penalty, put Borussia ahead, 2-1. After, Lukas Piszczek has done a long vertical pass where Kagawa and Lewandowski created a goal.
What a ball from Shinji Kagawa!
Again, Lewandowski, 4-1.
Through the legs out to Lewandowski!
4-2 from Ribery.
Ribéry, what a goal!
Then gegenpressing worked on Neuer and Lewandowski put an end, 5-2, hat-trick.
Is game, set and match now.
Klopp sealed the club's first ever domestic double, which he describes as being better than he could have imagined. They were able to defend the title of champion in 2012, which wasn't possible for other upstarts who could not last more than one season. But Borussia's dominance didn't last long, because soon Bayern launched its looting machine and scandalously took first Mario Götze and then, less scandalously, the main scorer Robert Lewandowski. Gradually, the team began to disintegrate. And disappointed with this situation at the club, Jürgen Klopp left after a couple of unsuccessful seasons. The ending in the English Premier League turned out to be dramatic. 6 teams were on the verge of relegation at once. If everything was clear with West Ham and they got relegated in advance, then 5 teams had a threat of relegation to the Championship. Before round 32, Wigan, Wolverhampton and West Ham were in the relegation zone. There was a threat of relegation for Aston Villa, but they showed a successful stretch in the last 8 matches and didn't get relegated. So before the 38th round, West Ham, Wigan and Blackpool were in the relegation zone. West Ham, on the contrary, showed an incredibly bad interval. They lost in 7 out of 8 matches and got a draw in 1. The most memorable was the match of the 31st round against Manchester United, where the Hammers led 2-0 but conceded 4 goals from the Red Devils. Mark Noble scored a brace for West Ham, but Manchester United responded with a Wayne Rooney hat-trick and Javier Chicharito Hernandez goal. A remarkable comeback for Man United. It just so happened that the two contenders for relegation played each other in the last round. Molineux's home walls should have helped Wolverhampton, but in the first half the team was taken apart, 3-0 before the break. Especially memorable was Emerton's powerful long-range strike. In the second half the Wolves responded with a beautiful free-kick and Hunt's goal. It may seem that these goals meant nothing, but by scoring the second, Wolverhampton got ahead of Birmingham, which at that time was playing in a draw with Spurs, and Wolves were ahead of the difference between goals scored and conceded. Wigan faced Stoke City, who reached the FA Cup final that year, where they lost to Manchester City. Wigan could have won and got relegated, or they could have lost and stayed in the Premier League. There were many scenarios for Wigan. Stoke had a couple of dangerous moments, but the Latics defended heroically, and in the 78th minute, Hugo Rodallega scored the only goal, thereby securing a place in the English elite for the next year. Blackpool also flew out. They were remembered for 2 games against Manchester United, where at some point they led, but the Red Devils made a comeback in both matches. Birmingham met Tottenham in the last round. Pavlyuchenko's brace left no chances for the citizens. But Birmingham had a consolation that season. Having passed another contender for relegation in the League Cup, West Ham, the citizens met Arsenal in the final. The first dangerous moment was at the goal of the Gunners, where there was a clear penalty, but the referee had a different opinion and he saw an offside somewhere. But justice prevailed when the citizens scored from a corner kick. In response, there was an Arsenal attack where Wilshere first hit the bar, but then a shove-in assisted Van Persie. At the time of the goal, there were 10 citizens in the penalty area, but they couldn't prevent the goal. Then there was a dangerous attack and a shot at the post from Birmingham. Next is Foster's heroic save, and judging by his trophy cabinet, the League Cup is his favorite tournament. In total, he will have 3 of them. But then there was the defining moment of the match. Having failed to understand each other's actions, Koscielny prevented Szczęsny from taking the ball. As a result, it ended up with Martins, who scored the second and winning ball. Thus, Birmingham won the second big trophy in its history and got the right to play in the Europa League. The citizens in Europe played well in group with Bruges, Maribor and Braga. But having earned 10 points, they did not reach the playoffs.
Geschossen, ist gewohnt. Aber 7 auf der Bahn! Was für ein Goal!
After several years of crisis, Udinese returns to the top of Italian football in order to fight for the highest places. Sami Handanovic, Juan Cuadrado, Mehdi Benatia, Alexis Sanchez and the brightest star Antonio Di Natale will fight the entire Serie A and eventually take 4th place in the league. The beginning of the season for the team from Udine turned out to be frankly terrible. The team had 4 defeats from the start, and the first victory came only in the 6th round over Cesena. Then the team began a stable period in the standings. The real period of recovery began after the new year. Inter and Juventus were defeated in January. In the game against the Turinese, Zapata and Sanchez distinguished themselves. Even the great Buffon didn't help. Juventus had a great goal by Marchisio, but the game ended with a score score of 1-2. Also memorable was the match against Milan with a score of 4-4. In the period from January 6 to March 20, Udinese had an unbeaten streak of 13 matches.
Still free there to the 6-yard box. Sanchez!
The match against Palermo, which received 7 unanswered goals, was also memorable. Of these, 4 goals were scored by the young Alexis Sanchez.
Number 5! Wasn't just for number 6. Sanchez still got the ball, doesn't have any support, drives it in.
But the main star of the team was Antonio Di Natale. Last season he became the top scorer in the league with 29 goals. In season 10-11 he scored 28 goals. It was period from 2009 to 2014, which was the most successful period in his career when he scored 120 goals overall. A bright game for the club also allowed him to become the main striker in the national team. He finished his career a few months before his 40th birthday, and the most vivid memories associated with him will be about Udinese and his career after 30. Although, perhaps if Di Natale had been more independent on his wife's power, he could have been able to play in more prestigious clubs. His wife didn't want to move to another city, and the Italian squad didn't have the volition to express a different opinion. But in the European tournaments, the results of the Italian team were not very good. After the team took 4th place in the Serie A, it got the right to compete in the Champions League, but it had to first pass the qualification stage. Udinese failed it and got into the Europa League, where he got out of the group with Rennes, Celtic and Atletico Madrid, which they even managed to defeat with a score of 2-0. Venezia and Flores scored. In the playoffs, they defeated PAOK in the first stage, but lost to AS Alkmaar in the last 16. The following season, the team took 3rd place in Italy and failed to qualify for the Champions League again, but this time there was a failure in the Europa League group. 4th place in the group with Liverpool, Anzhi and Young Boys. But already in 2012, the team began to break up. Sanchez, Inle, Kandreva left. In 2013, Handanovic, Isla and Cuadrado left. The club's results began to deteriorate, and after that, the fans could only dream of high places in the table. Having trained weak and medium-sized teams, young for coaching age, Massimiliano Allegri receives an offer in 2010 to lead Milan. In the first season, he will take the Scudetto, then the Italian Superclub, and loudly declare himself in the football industry as a big coach. Juventus still recovering from the Calciopoli. The coaching reshuffle doesn't help, and their forwards cannot score even a dozen goals in the league. After Mourinho's departure, Inter appoints Rafael Benitez as a coach and takes a step back, so it does not work fully for the Scudetto. Milan takes the title without a fight. Having started unevenly, Milan climbs to the top of the standings by the 11th round and no longer leaves the first place until the very end. And thus, Milan takes its 18th but not the last title. The key link of that Milan was the Gattuso-Pirlo link, the unity of opposites. The cold-blooded northerner Pirlo and the explosive southerner Gattuso, the maestro of refined football and a snarling watchdog of midfield. From the position of deep playmaker, Pirlo conducted Milan's game, and he didn't have to do a lot of rough work since that's what Gattuso was doing. However, in the summer, brilliant Galliani will make his main mistake during his career in Milan. It will seem to him that Pirlo has aged and Milan doesn't need him. This is a strawberry donut. This is a chocolate donut. This is a caramel donut. And this is a vanilla flavored donut. Here in Russia, they cost about less than $1 a piece, and everyone can afford them. But on September 29, 2011, a ridiculous scandal occurred in Greater Manchester. David De Gea stole a donut. The Sun wrote that the newly acquired goalkeeper allegedly grabbed a donut in Krispy Kreme and ran out of Tesco with it. Given his weekly salary at that time £70,000, he could have bought 58,823 donuts. But he decided to save money. Unfortunately for him, he was caught red-handed and forced to pay for a donut and not to show up at Tesco for 3 months. But given to the poor reputation of the Sun and the version that the Spaniard himself told,
we saw some donuts and we take the donuts and we eat the donuts and we go to pay and I forget the wallet in my car. So I say, come on, let's go to take the wallet to the car and we come back and we pay the things.
It turned out that the story is less stupid. He went with friends to Tesco and was hungry and ate, hoping to pay later. Then he remembered that his wallet was in the car and went after it. And at that moment he was caught by the security. This version is more plausible, but still, didn't he know that in absolutely every store you have to pay even if you ate? Or why couldn't you just ask one of your friends to go for a wallet or ask them to pay? In 2002, Porto was headed by a young Portuguese coach, Jose Mourinho, who won the UEFA Cup in his first season. And subsequently that cool squad was sold out to top clubs. In 2010, Porto was headed by young Portuguese coach André Villas-Boas, who won the Europa League in his first season, after which the cool squad was sold out again for a lot of money. History repeats itself after 8 years. In the Portuguese league, there are no defeats for the whole 2011. In total, the invisible streak will last 55 matches from March 2010 to January 2012. Porto won the cup almost without problems, experiencing difficulties only in the semi-final with Benfica. In the final, the Dragons smashed Vitória de Guimarães with a score of 2-6. Porto will beat the same opponent in the Superclub match, but not so confidently, with a score of 2-1. Then the Portuguese team played Otamendi, João Moutinho, James Rodrigues, Hulk and Radamel Falcao. The Latin American duo Hulk-Falcao played a big role in winning the title. The Brazilian with 23 goals became the top scorer of the tournament, and the Colombian shared the second place with 16 goals. And if Hulk was a little better in the Portuguese Championship, then the Colombian destroyed everyone in the Europa League. In the easy group, Radamel performed well and it was calm in the playoffs until the quarterfinals, but it was the calm before the storm. In the quarterfinals against Spartak Moscow, he scored 4 goals in 2 matches and the Portuguese won with a total score of 10-3. The coach of the Moscovites, Valery Karpin, justifying himself to the fans, said, He also added that even if the team has a strong player, it doesn't mean success, and cited the example of Zenit, which lost to Twente in the last 16. In the semi-finals, Falcao broke Villarreal, scoring 5 in 2 matches. It was already clear who would be the finalist in the first game, which ended with a score of 5-1. The Spaniards won the second match, but it was only a formality. It should also be noted that the other 2 semi-finalists were Portuguese Benfica and Braga, which indicates the level of Portuguese football that season. But it was Braga that made it to the final. In the final, perhaps deciding to keep the intrigue, Radamel scored only 1 goal. The Colombian himself scored 17 goals in the Europa League that season and was bought by Atletico Madrid in the summer. Villas-Boas, repeating Mourinho's success, didn't stay for the next season to win the Champions League as his teacher, but immediately left on his way to Chelsea. But at this point, the positive similarities between the Portuguese coaches end. He will fail in London. One of his problems will be his age. It is difficult to be an authority for coevals. Further, there will be successes in his career, but he will not become the second Jose. In French football, there are periods of long reign of one club: Saint-Étienne in 60s and 70s, Marseille in early 90s, Lyon in 2000s and PSG nowadays. But there are upstarts like Lille in 2011, which became the champion and also won the National Cup that year. Lille in Cup wasn't without difficulties, defeating rivals with small scores. But the Dogs managed to reach the final and met Paris Saint-Germain there, which the Qataris will buy only in 17 days. But Lille was able to defeat the Capitals team with a score of 1-0 with the help of Orbagnac's goal in the 89th minute.
La victoire du LOSC ce soir au Stade de France.
Lille didn't start the 2010-11 season very well. Before the 11th round they were variable successes, and at that time the Dogs were in 8th place. But then the stabilization of success began, and from the 13th round Lille became one of the leaders and lasted until the end of the season. Moussa Sow became the top scorer of the team and in the league, scoring 25 goals in League One. His successes impressed Fenerbahce, where he moved a year later. The real carnage was in the Superclub, where Lille played against the silver medalist of last season, Marseille. In a fierce game, the Provençals, having scored 5 goals in 24 minutes against 4 from Lille, won and took the trophy. Despite the defeat in the Super Cup, Lille had a great year and it would have been impossible without a good coach. It was Rudi Garcia who has been building this team since 2008. In addition to already mentioned Sow and Azar, Gervinho, Adil Rami, Mathieu Debuchy and Idrissa Gueye were also in that team. Many of that dream team will leave and Lille will experience a game crisis in the following years and will try on the French crown only in 10 years. After an excellent series at the Euro 2012 qualification, an unexpected betrayal happened in the Montenegro national team. The head coach Zlatko Kranjčar was sacked with the justification that he is an alcoholic. Montenegro during the Euro 2012 qualification first defeated Wales, then Bulgaria,
It didn't get too much better than that for Bulgaria.
and Switzerland with the Vucinic legendary celebration.
And again, Dick Square off inside the Podgorica Stadium.
And played a goalless draw with England, but after that it was less successful, a draw with Bulgaria and a defeat by Wales. But one way or another the national team was doing well. It was a surprise that 6 days after the match with Camry, head coach Zlatko Kranjčar was fired with an accusation of alcoholism. The dismissal was incredibly absurd for 3 reasons. First of all, the team's results were good. Secondly, who in general fires with such a direct accusation, especially of alcoholism? It's just a sabotage of his future career, and Football Federation of Montenegro could sack him using simple words. Thirdly, after Montenegro he worked in Iran and Qatar, where alcohol is very strict. All this suggests that someone personally disliked the crowd. And the national team itself, although it took second place, but lost in the playoffs to the Czech Republic. Maybe it wasn't just necessary to sack the coach before the important stages?
The success is carried on, and in fairness to the club and all the players who come here, they know they have to win.
In May 2011, Manchester United wins another Premier League title, but this time it wasn't a simple title, but the 19th title. And thus Ferguson fulfilled the ideological goal of his entire career at the club, beating Liverpool by the number of titles. As he would say about his main achievement, "My main challenge is not what's happening at the moment. My greatest challenge was knocking Liverpool right off their fucking perch." And you can print that. It seemed that since 2008, Ferguson has been getting fewer chess pieces on the pitch. However, the ability of the genius allowed the Scottish coach to squeeze the full potential out of the squad, which wasn't significantly updated in terms of the new stars. United won 18 home games out of 19 possible and repeated Chelsea's record of the 2005-06 season. Manchester hardly noticed the opponents, but Chelsea turned out to be the problem in the 18th round. The Mancunians lost 2-1 and Ferguson had a lot of questions to the referee, which he expressed not in the most polite way. For that, he received a 5-match suspension. But in the return game, the Red Devils returned the favor and won with the same score. And it was this game that practically defined the champion of that season. And the most memorable game was the match against the neighbors. On February 12, the Manchester derby took place, where this great goal was scored.
Nani.
Rooney! Oh, wonderful! What a goal! Wayne Rooney out of this world!
One of the main faces was Dimitar Berbatov, who scored 20 goals and became the top scorer of the season. These goals include 2 hat-tricks and 1 pentatrick against Blackburn Rovers. Louis Nani was also very helpful, especially at the Community Shield match. The game was against City, who won the FA Cup. Man United were losing 2-0 before the break, but one ball was won back by Smalling. Then another goal came after a beautiful combination which Nani finished. But then the score didn't change until 94th minute and then it was Fergie time. The Mancunians took the ball far away and Nani accelerated, but 2 Manchester City players were closer to the ball. But the Portuguese pressure confused everyone. He intercepted the ball, strived for the goal and scored the winning ball. Rio Ferdinand and Nemanja Vidic were in form. The Serb even became the best player in the league for the 2nd time. But the era of the great squad was slowly passing away as Gary Neville, Edwin van der Sar and Paul Scholes decided to end their careers. The latter, however, will return in 6 months. The strongest teams at that time met in the Champions League final. Manchester United was going through the last years of the golden era of Ferguson, and Barcelona was scaring opponents just with their logo. But even despite the magnificent shape of the Mancunians, Barcelona again, as 2 years ago, showed which club is the strongest in Europe. Barcelona was doing well. In the group they were finally able to defeat Rubin Kazan, but only on the 4th attempt. Then they passed Arsenal, where even a beautiful goal scored by Arshavin didn't help the Gunners. In the quarterfinals, they met Shakhtar Donetsk, but Barcelona then turned out to be more magnificent than the club from Ukraine. Real Madrid was in the semifinals, and of course, this victory meant more than a passage to the final. In the group stage, Manchester, without suffering a single defeat, reached the playoffs, where they beat not the weakest opponents. First there was Marseille, then one of the main rivals at that time, Chelsea, but it turned out to bypass the club from London. Then there was the dream team Schalke, but for that cool team from Gelsenkirchen, United was too tough. The match was held at Wembley, which gave an advantage to the team from Britain. But, as Ferguson would later write in his book, I understood that Barcelona had only become stronger over these 2 years. Nevertheless, he noted before the match that this will be the main final of the decade. Manchester outplayed its opponents in only one thing, the growth of players. Undersized players played for Barca, who complicated the life of the Ferdinand-Vidic link. And the first goal came in the 27th minute when Xavi found Pedro free in the penalty area. But at the 34th minute, Rooney equalized after a beautiful combination in which the Catalans got confused. But everything was decided in the second half, where Messi first scored with a long-range shot, then Villa put an end to the hopes of the British. Barcelona completely outplayed Manchester United in the second half without giving a single chance for at least some kind of distinct attack. The cup was raised by Eric Abidal, who defeated Cancer that year. It was a symbolic gesture from Puyol, who handed the captain's armband to him.
Silva. Beautifully timed run, Balotelli to make it 2. And are you kidding? Serious? Mario Balotelli. And he's getting booed for this. That's a bit disrespectful, I believe, to the LA Galaxy. A bit. Here's why Mario Balotelli looks set to come out. Are you kidding me? Even Zeko's thinking.
20 years ago, Paris Saint-Germain was of little interest outside France, even despite the small successes in Europe. Already on May 31st, 2011, Qatar Sports Investment bought 70% of PSG shares and made planetary scale club out of it. Arab countries have reputation problems, and to restore it, the United Arab Emirates in 2008, Saudi Arabia in 2021 and Qatar in 2011 are taking steps in this direction in the football industry. Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, the Emir of Qatar, bought 70% of PSG shares using a sovereign wealth fund, and a year later the rest 30%. Every major decision goes through Qatar Sports Investments chairman Al Khilaifi first, but Al Thani has the final word. In November 2010, right before the World Cup vote, UEFA President Michel Platini met at the Élysée Palace with French President Nicolas Sarkozy, the Emir of Qatar Al Thani, and the Qatari Prime Minister. Sarkozy is a well-known supporter of PSG, which was then struggling financially under the ownership of Colony Capital. After that meeting, Platini changed his voting intention from the US to Qatar, and 6 months later KSI bought PSG. There is an opinion that Sarkozy promised to help Qatar get the right to host the World Cup in Qatar for the purchase of PSG. In the first transfer window, PSG managed to attract mainly the most greedy players, just like Manchester City in 2008. The Qataris bought Pastore for 42 million euros. In the first transfer window, more than 100 million euros were spent in total, which is 10 times more than at the start of the previous season. PSG didn't get out of the group in the Europa League, and this was the reason for Comboire's dismissal, and the Sheikhs invited Carlo Ancelotti, who was far from being an Everton-level coach at the time. In the future, PSG will invite not only expensive but also high-quality players. There will be many stars: Ibrahimovic, Beckham, Cavani, Buffon, Ramos, Donnarumma, Navas, Thiago Silva, Neymar, who will become the most expensive purchase in the history of football, and as the cherry on the cake, Lionel Messi. There will also be a legend inside the club, Marquinhos. In the beginning, an unremarkable character, but then the captain of the team and the most efficient football player in the team, on a par with Verratti. There will be also failed transfers such as Jesse, Gamero, Sissoko and Alex. The club also has a new and very good media strategy. The club is dependent on Qatar's oil revenue, so it was important to bring it to a certain level of self-sufficiency. Building a global brand, a PSG culture, is what PSG will try to do and what will turn out well. PSG collaborated with Cochet, Manish Arora and Bape, but the biggest collaboration is with Air Jordan, an attempt by a French club and an American subsidiary of Nike to raise the boundaries of football and basketball. In 2013, an important move will be to change the logo. It will become juicier. Only a large inscription Paris remains on the top. The cradle that many people don't understand was removed, and the heraldic lily was made larger. The dictatorship of Lyon was replaced by the dictatorship of PSG. There will be practically no problems with internal opponents. During the time of the Sheikhs, PSG won't win the league only 3 times, losing to Montpellier, Monaco and Lille, which is likely to be an exception rather than a rule. The task will be to win the Champions League. That goal was ideological for the Qataris, to win the main European tournament before home World Cup. Nasser Al-Khelaifi set out to win the cup before 2015, but from today's perspective it sounds very naive. PSG will constantly stumble in the second legs. This will be their main problem. This will lead to one of the most dramatic matches, remontada. Only a simple tournament bracket and a different tournament format will allow them to reach the final. But there they will be defeated by a more serious opponent. As a result, the ideological goal will fail, and Qatar won't be in the position in which the Sheikhs wanted it to be before the 2022 World Cup. PSG will have questions every now and then, mainly of a financial nature. The FFP rules will bypass the capital club, making the situation more mysterious. There will be complaints against PSG both on minor issues, such as the fact that the players should greet and say goodbye to the fans for an additional fee, not criticize the partners and the coach, and on very important issues like expensive transfer campaigns like in the 17-18 season and inflated sponsorship contracts which are mainly related to Qatar. The insurance against problems is that there are too many interested people in the prosperity of this club. Also, additional patronage is provided by the French club, perhaps because Nasser Al-Khelaifi is a chairman of their European Club Association. PSG will prove its loyalty to UEFA by not joining the Super League venture in 2021. But perhaps after the 2022 World Cup, PSG is destined for a sad fate and stricter attitude. But maybe at that point PSG will have a new strategy. In the summer of 2011, the star of Brazil's main talent, Neymar, lights up even brighter because he wins the Puskás Award and the Copa Libertadores. But now he is popular not only in his homeland, but all over the world. Santos had problems in the Brazilian Championship in 2011. The club took only 10th place, but on the other hand, Humberto Borges, a Santos player, became the top scorer of the tournament, scoring 23 goals in 34 matches. Neymar had 13 goals in Serie A that season. The team did much better in the Copa Libertadores. The team from the state of São Paulo got the right to participate in this tournament thanks to its victory in the Brazilian Cup in 2010. For the sake of fairness, I must say that Santos started this tournament badly. In the first 3 rounds there were 2 draws and 1 defeat, which called into question the victory in the group. But the Brazilian team won the next 3 games and entered the playoffs from the 2nd place. In the playoffs, Club America was defeated first. It took only 1 goal from Ganso in 2 matches to win. Then Santos passed Once Caldas, as well with a minimum gap of 1 goal. Alan Patrick, well known in Ukraine, scored as well as Neymar. In the semifinals, the resistance was provided by Paraguayan Cerro Porteño. The score in the 2 matches was 4-3, but it was Santos who went to the final. Santos' opponent in the decisive match was the Uruguayan Peñarol, who hadn't won this tournament for 24 years. The first match and the first half of the 2nd match turned out to be boring due to the absence of goals. But the situation was changed by a beautiful combination of Santos, which ended with Neymar scoring in the bottom corner of the goal of the Uruguayan team. At the 68th minute, the score became 2-0 thanks to Danilo, well known to European fans today. In one of Peñarol's attacks, the ball ricochets off a Santos player and hits the goal. But that's all the Uruguayans can do. Santos won the Copa Libertadores for the 3rd time in its history. But the most exciting match of that year turned out to be the match between Flamengo and Santos, between the nascent talent of Neymar and fading talent of Ronaldinho. In that match, both stars work wonders. Ronaldinho isn't young, but he still shows a very beautiful and smart game. As a result, he became the author of 3 Flamengo goals. Neymar was very useful in that game and scored 2 goals himself, one of which was awarded the Puskás Award.
Levitando o jogador do Santos. Aí o Neymar protegeu, fez o drible. Que lance do Neymar! Que golaço!
But the game ends with a guest victory of the team from Rio de Janeiro with a score of 4-5. It seemed that Neymar already needed a stronger club, but he will do it later. However, at the Club World Cup, Neymar Santos met with Barcelona, where his first meeting in the game took place. Barcelona defeated the opponent with a crushing 4-0. But perhaps, admiring the full-time game of the Brazilian, Barcelona wanted to entice Neymar, who will move to Catalonia in 2 years.
Защитник Андрей Михалёв, заметив, что Городов далековато выдвинулся вперед, прямо из центрального круга направил мяч по дуге за спину голкиперу, чем привел в трибуны в неописуемый восторг.
In 2011, one of the worst events in the history of Argentina took place. After a decade of systematic and deliberate destruction of the club, for the first time in its history, River Plate falls out of the top division of Argentina. From 2001 to 2009, the post of president of River Plate was held by Jose Maria Aguilar. This man is who will be cursed by half of Buenos Aires. Fans accuse him of selling the strongest players, buying with the weak ones and destroying the club's internal academy. And of course he is accused of corruption because the money from the sale of strong players has gone somewhere, but definitely not into the River Plate. As a result, this led to the fact that in the 2008 Apertura, River Plate took the last 20th place. But the worst was yet to come. The capital club didn't spend the 10-11 season so well and not so bad, but due to the relegation system, which involves calculating the average number of points over the last 3 seasons, River Plate got into the relegation playoffs. Ironically, such a system with 3 seasons was created specifically for River Plate, so that they would not get relegated. In the relegation playoffs, River played with Belgrano from Cordoba. The result was unexpected for everyone because the team from the province beat the giant of the Argentine league in the first game with a score of 2-0. The fans were unhappy. In the second game, things were going well at the beginning as River scored first. But then Belgrano scored. The score was 1-1 and that was the end of the match. The tie ended with a score of 3-1 and for the first time in its history, River Plate got relegated to Primera B. The fans were disappointed. Someone was crying and someone was rioting.
And squads in riot gear firing tear gas and rubber bullets. Sunday's ugly scenes came just days before the country's due to host the Copa America.
The fans of Boca Juniors, their eternal rivals, mocked them as much as they could. But one obvious thing wasn't taken into account by anyone: the fact that such a big club will return to the Primera Division very soon. And so it happened. River returned the following year. But as time has shown, it did him good, because after that, the club regained its greatness, which is expressed in 2 Copa Libertadores.
Pierpaoli, parte Barreto con il destro, Parandanovic, Gazzi è lì sul
parte di Michele, parato e poi
dal dischetto Zarate, Parandanovic, conclusione
Copa America 2011 started on the first day of July. The tournament was held in Argentina. The hosts didn't approach the tournament in the best shape. Messi was great in the club, but he didn't shine so brightly in the national team. But a very unremarkable but important invention appeared at the tournament, a vanishing spray. It is most often used by the referee to indicate the minimum distance that their defending team may position themselves from the ball during a direct free kick, as well as to indicate the spot from where the kick is taken. The spray appears similar to white paint or watered-down shaving foam when initially applied. It completely disappears within a minute, leaving no visible residue behind. Such an invention was developed back in 2000 by Brazilian Heine Alemannia, but it was in 2011 at the Copa America that the spray was used in a major international tournament. In 2018, Alemannia publicly alleged that FIFA have not paid him for the spray, instead continuing to produce and use the spray without paying royalties. In December 2017, a Brazilian court acknowledged Alemannia's patent and ordered FIFA to stop using the spray in its competitions. FIFA has refused to comply, arguing that the Brazilian courts have no jurisdiction over them. Another amazing thing was that the underdogs showed very good results in the tournament. Venezuela defeated Ecuador in the group and reached the semi-finals, beating Chile in the quarter-finals. Peru coming out of third place in the group and defeating Colombia in the quarter-finals 2-0. Reached the semi-finals, where they lost and clashed in the match for the third place with Venezuela, defeating 4-1. Notable among the Inca national team are Uruguayan coach of Armenian origin Sergio Markarian and striker Jose Guerrero, who scored 5 goals at the tournament. 3 of them were scored in the bronze medal match and all in the second half. Paraguay achieved a better result, silver. The most surprising thing about their success is that they didn't win a single game in a regular time. In the playoffs, they met the same opponents as in the group, Brazil and Venezuela, but in the playoffs, they beat them on penalties. Poor accuracy of the pentacampeons and goalkeeper Justo Villar helped, who will also help in the semifinals and will be nominated as the best goalkeeper of the tournament. Thus, Paraguay has the 6th silver in the South American tournament, to which they came without a single goal scored in the playoffs. The winner was Uruguay. They took the 15th and so far the last South American title. Suarez had no problems in the final with Guarani, scoring 3 goals. 1 goal was scored by Luis Suarez, who became the best player of the tournament, and 2 by Diego Forlan, who completed another achievement. He won this trophy, as did his father and grandfather. Thus, Forlan has a dynasty achievement. His family has won this cup for 3 generations in a row. But this trophy will be Uruguay's last. They won't win any trophy, at least for the next 13 years, even with the magnificent duo in attack Suarez-Cavani.
Yargıtay aralarında Fenerbahçe Başkanı Aziz Yıldırım'ın da bulunduğu 93 sanıklı şike davasında kararını açıkladı.
In July 2011, a scandal broke out in Turkey regarding match fixing involving several clubs, but first of all Fenerbahçe. The case will have lasted for years. The club will have been banned from participating in European competitions, but at the end, everyone will have been acquitted. Aziz Yıldırım, the president of Fenerbahçe, was detained on July 3, 2011. He was suspected by the Turkish Football Federation of organizing 13 match fixings. In 2012, he was sent to prison along with other defendants and will be released only a year later. Fenerbahçe was also excluded from the Champions League of the 11-12 season. Fans of the Istanbul club were unhappy and organized rallies in support of their president and against the court's decision. The case took on a continental character when UEFA got involved in case in 2013. As a result, the European Association excluded Fener for 2 seasons in European tournaments. The most important opponent in this story for the Istanbul club was Trabzonspor, which only increased the intensity of the confrontation between the clubs. The decision to give Fenerbahce's place in the Champions League in 2011 to Trabzonspor was controversial since the Eastern club was also suspected of cheating. In addition to Fener, UEFA also punished Beşiktaş, Eskişehirspor and Sivasspor. But the case ended with an unexpected result. On October 9, 2015, the courts acquitted Fenerbahce and president on all accusations. The Istanbul club even made a 2-hour film telling about this saga. As a result, neither side was satisfied. Neither Trabzonspor, whose accusations were rejected, nor Fenerbahce, who lost a lot of money due to missing European competitions. Fener will demand 135 million euros from the UEFA and the Turkish Football Federation in compensation for 3 missed seasons in European tournaments. Football transfers usually took place silently, and fans were sometimes simply faced with the fact that now this football player is with us. But the era of the internet has changed the football industry, including the sphere of football transfers. Now people want to know the news not the next morning, but instantly. But in addition to the speed that appeared with the help of the internet, reliability is also important. It can be both individuals and large news companies, be reliable or unreliable or even just lie. But there is one person who predicts transfers with an accuracy of 99%. It's Fabrizio Romano, an Italian journalist with great connections in the football industry.
Cristiano Ronaldo, back to Manchester United, here we go.
Romano was born in 1993 in Naples. Fabrizio began his journalistic activity in his late teens. The first successful prediction was when, in the summer of 2011, with the help of an unknown agent from Barcelona, he received insider information that, still unknown at that time, Mauro Icardi from La Masia would move to the youth team of Sampdoria. Here we go. This is his catchphrase, which he uses when a player's transfer to another club is confirmed. He created it in 2016 when Pogba moved to Manchester United, without realizing that it would become his signature phrase.
Anthony to Manchester United, here we go.
The Italian received an explosive increase in popularity in 2020 when he confirmed the transfer of Bruno Fernandes to Man United. In general, it is the fans of the team from Manchester who follow his activities the most, according to Fabrizio. Therefore, another period of growth in his popularity was the transfer of Ronaldo to the Red Devils club in 2021. One of the most amazing insiders he has made, he considers the news about Zidane's second departure from Real Madrid as a coach in 2021. Fabrizio himself was very surprised by this news. There are 2 main reasons for his success. The first is the era of social networks, when one person can bypass entire news companies in popularity. And secondly, connections. Romano has a lot of them. First of all, he tries to contact the agents of the players, then the official representatives of the club, and in the end with the players who least want to talk about their plans. Fabrizio's initial connections were given by his mentor Gianluca Di Marzio, a journalist and insider who specializes more in domestic football and football players. Fabrizio works very hard. As he himself says, he spends 17 hours a day on the phone keeping in touch with football agents trying to find new information. And he sleeps only 5 hours a day. But on the other hand, such work eventually led him to great popularity and brought a lot of money. In the 21st century, it is becoming increasingly obvious that the rich clubs don't give any chances to the poor. Observing such an unequal situation, UEFA in 2011 introduced the Financial Fair Play regulations. After a while, there will be no obvious results. The rich will be stronger anyway, and the law itself will be remembered only during scandals. As the UEFA officials themselves say, the purpose of the law is not to equalize clubs in size and wealth, but to encourage them to develop systematically to achieve success instead of constantly searching for quick solutions. The main principle of the rule is not to spend more than you earned. Of course, this isn't a strict rule. You can have losses and remain unpunished. For this, there will be a certain limit of losses, which UEFA will change. Also, the club won't be punished for the financial losses if there is a positive dynamic of their payments. Expenses related to the construction of stadium, training bases, academy and infrastructure won't be taken into account. Another rule is that the owner can invest up to 30 million euros per year in the club. In the beginning, this amount was 45 million. Also, UEFA can make concession in the crisis situation in the country of the club, as happened, for example, in 2020, when the world was overwhelmed by a pandemic crisis. Another important point of the FFP will be the regulation of sponsorship agreements. As it is written on the official website of UEFA, if a club owner makes investments through a sponsorship agreement with his company, the competent UEFA authorities will conduct an audit and, if necessary, compare the ratio of expenses and income from this agreement with market prices. According to the amendments, if a legal entity or several such persons related to the same owner or the same state structure provides more than 30% of all proceeds to the club, then such a legal entity automatically falls into the category of an interested party. A significant case of violation was the violation of Besiktas, who signed expensive players from 2010 to 2015. Thus, the losses significantly exceeded the real income of the club. As a result, the Istanbul Eagles were fined 5 million euros, and also in the 16-17 season they reduced the application in European competitions to 23 players. After 2 years, the Turks showed full break-even, after which all restrictions were promptly removed. In Russia, where football is far from the market system, clubs are funded by taxpayers from the budgets of regions or companies with state participation. So in 2013, Dynamo Moscow had a club budget of $257 million. VTB Bank, the majority owner of the shares is the Russian government, has signed a contract with the club for an amount that doesn't correspond to market realities, and UEFA was interested in this case. After that, the club got into a big debt hole, about 200 million euros, had to sell players with large salaries, UEFA excluded them from European competitions, and as a result, the club in 2016 experienced a great shame by being relegated from the Premier League. The biggest scandal will be the violation of the rules related to the sponsorship agreements of Manchester City in 2020. The non-market value of the agreements and a large connection with the state will be the subject of claims from UEFA.
I don't like that we speak about Manchester City only. We punished 5 to 10 clubs per season.
Manchester City will be even excluded from the Champions League first, but then return their right to play in the main European club tournament.
We beat UEFA! Screw you, FFP!
The media presented this impotence of UEFA in front of influential and rich clubs. There will be even rumors about corruption. But after all, it will be a draw, because English club will pay a fine for the financial violations.
Nobody wants to lose a case. We were not happy with the decision of Court of Arbitration for Sports, but we have to respect the decision of the body that we agreed it's the last instance in our decision-making process.
However, the idea of the financial regulation of the football industry in Europe is vague, because big clubs will eventually think more and more about independence from any supranational structure and lack of financial regulations.
Ecco la suggestiva visione dall'alto del nuovo stadio torinese denominato Delle Alpi.
Uno stadio che tutti i 42.000 spettatori ieri sera hanno definito emozionante.
On September 8, 2011, the opening of the new Juventus Stadium took place. It happens that clubs change outdated stadiums, but this stadium is also amazing because it is the first stadium in the country built specifically for football, that is, without athletic tracks.
Signori, benvenuti a casa!
And another interesting fact that is Juventus is the only club in the country that directly has full rights to the stadium. Juventus has fully recovered from Calciopoli, and rivals can only envy the financial stability of the Turin club. The construction of the arena took 2 years and there were no big scandals. The cost of the stadium was 120 million euros. For about that kind of money, Juventus will buy Ronaldo in 7 years. Despite the peculiarities of the stadium, for example, its 2 pillars in the shape of the letter A, the stadium itself is simple. But that's not what matters. The stadium, like the newly elected president Agnelli, embodies the new era of Juventus, which will be different from what it was before. And in fact, it will happen. Juventus in 2010s will become the absolute hegemon of Italy. The stadium itself accommodates 41,000 people. There are 2 restaurants, 21 bars, and a shopping center area 12 was built nearby so that the construction of the stadium would pay off faster. Also beautiful is the trophy room of Bianconeri, but the most impressive is the light accompaniment during matches. Subsequently, the rights to the name of the stadium would be bought by Allianz, a German insurance company, and arena would be called Allianz Stadium. The most important event that will take place at the stadium will be the Europa League final in 2014, where Benfica, still suffering from the curse of Bela Gutmann, will lose to Sevilla.
Tromsø fikk til å ta gull, og dette kan være årets scoring! Heading fra midtbane! Samuelsen, dette kommer du aldri til å få oppleve før eller siden.
In August 2011, after a routine draw of the Champions League groups, unthinkable thing happened unexpectedly both for the fans and for the clubs themselves. 2 groups of death, the failures of Manchester and Ukraine clubs, as well as joy for the Russian fans. There were 3 strong clubs in Group A and F. So in Group A were Bayern, Napoli and Manchester City, and in Group F Arsenal, Marseille and Borussia Dortmund. Intense matches broke out between the teams, but as we know there are only 2 passes to the playoffs. As a result, without the European spring, the German champion and Manchester City remain. But another club from Manchester isn't without problems. United in a seemingly easy group gave way to Benfica and Basel, gaining only 9 points and going to the Europa League. The performances of the Ukrainian Shakhtar and Dynamo also turned into failures. Dynamo didn't even qualify for the group stage, and Shakhtar, which was a force in Europe at the beginning of the year, is inferior to Porto, Apple and Zenit in the group. But at the group stage, CSKA fans got positive emotions. According to the results, the Army Club went to the playoffs. Horses, the nickname of the Moscow club, even beat Inter Milan in an away match with a score of 1-2 with the help of goals by Seydou Doumbia and Vasily Berezutsky. In the playoffs, CSKA met with Real Madrid, who didn't let them go further. But it was joyful in the northern capital because for the first time in history, Zenit from St. Petersburg got into the Champions League playoffs. The northern club defeated Shakhtar and Porto. The victory was unexpected. The Portuguese club lost in an away match with Zenit with a score of 3-1. But Zenit's successes ended there because in the last 16 they lost to Benfica in an exciting duel with a total score of 4-3. This Portuguese club will become the most unloved opponent of Zenit outside the country. In fall of 2011, during a match between Manchester United and Liverpool, Luis Suarez played hard against Patrice Evra. A verbal altercation started between the players, where the Frenchman turned the conversation towards the origin of the Uruguayan, calling him Sudamericana, which means South American. Suarez, suspecting nothing, responded the same way, starting from the origin of Evra, calling him Negro. Everything would be fine because this word isn't an insult in South America, but the ruthless British press and a large number of people began to persecute the Uruguayan on the grounds of racism. Interesting was also the brave position of Liverpool itself, which took the main version of Evra's slander for the sake of disqualifying Suarez. The case, which was conducted by the Football Association of England, ended with the verdict that Suarez used the word Negro several times in an unfriendly manner and suspended him for 8 matches and fined £40,000. During the next meeting of the Uruguayan and the Frenchman, it would seem that everything was resolved, but Luis, holding a grudge, did not shake Evra's hand. He could have put an end to the conflict, but he started it again. It was also quite obvious that Suarez was offended by Patrice and not by the entire black race, but the British cruel press accused Luis only of racist rhetoric. Most of all, everyone has a pity for the Liverpool Football Club itself, which, as it best it could, supported its football player and smoothly brought the parties to reconciliation. But Luis, considering that his ego is more important than the club, did not reconcile. Although the media tried to present Evra as an ordinary victim of racism, Patrice still showed his intelligence and conciliatory position with his words and actions. And Luis had to be under pressure from the media for several more years and regained England's love with his excellent performance in the 13-14 season, when he was recognized as the best player of the Premier League season. It is interesting that Evra also voted for him. Their conciliatory handshake eventually happened in the 2015 Champions League final. However, such conflicts between players of different races will occur, and media will purposefully discard any reasons for a dispute except racism. And such conflicts would be inflated by the media in even larger numbers and on larger scales in the next decade. The Arabs are in Manchester City for the 3rd year, and their goal is clearly not to play in the Europa League. They show their championship ambitions already in 2011 when they win the FA Cup.
Silva again, Balotelli, pinball, Torres!
But a more important demonstration of their championship intentions was the game against Manchester United on October 23rd, which ended with a score of 1-6. In the standings, the teams from Manchester were first. City was ahead by 2 points. The game was played at Old Trafford, so it was logical that everyone had the idea in their head that United had a slight advantage. But the first goal came from City, and the goal itself wasn't as cool as its celebration. Then there was a goalless lull in the game, and so on until the end of the first half. The game changed dramatically after Evans got sent off. Ferguson would later use his elimination as an excuse to his defeat.
Of course, the first goal was aborted, but that's retrievable, that situation. The sending off, certainly that was a killer for us.
In the minority, United conceded 2 more goals. Balotelli scored a brace. In general, it was one of his career's best games. But the Red Devils cut the gap with a beautiful goal by Fletcher in the 81st minute. The satisfaction of United fans with this goal did not last long, as they plunged into complete darkness. In the 90th, 91st and 93rd minutes, City brought the score to a rout.
Make it 5! Oh, this is a day to remember, to stay away from Ferdinand and make...
So it was Manchester United's worst defeat in 56 years. The most memorable fan turned out to be this guy, because exactly in 10 years at the same stadium, United will experience a similar humiliation from Liverpool. Rags to riches stories are always in demand. One of such stories is the story of American Jay Demerit, who, not founding a club in his homeland, founded and his fame in England. This story more than deserves to be made into a movie about it. The low-budget documentary was made thanks to the money raised on Kickstarter. This film raised over $223,000, making it the most successful independent film via crowdfunding. The story of a young football player begins in Green Bay, Wisconsin. The film talks about Jay's sports family and the fact that he was engaged in various sports until the age of 16, but in the end, he chose soccer. Despite certain successes, Jay wasn't at that time a popular football player in the US, so after college, Demerit remains without a team. But due to not so strict parents and the risky nature of which the main character of the film himself speaks, he, without money, leaves with a friend to England who with his family helps him look for a team. A year of searching leads to nothing but to keep fit, the American plays in the lower amateur league, Sunday League, in the Southall FC. Demerit, as he says in the movie, ate primitively due to lack of money. But on one of the wonderful days, this amateur team gets a friendly pre-season game with the professional club Watford. Demerit doesn't miss a chance and shows his best side in the game against strong opponents, so the Watford coach invites Jay to his team. Then Demerit signs a contract and after 2 seasons goes to the Premier League, where he plays against the teams that could only see on TV or from the stands before.
Jay was a hero in the eyes of Watford fans. He had captained his team and played in the highest division of professional soccer, but there was still something missing.
It seemed that the dream has already come true, but Jay's ambitions are bigger and he wants to play internationally. So he is invited by the US national team, for which he will play at the Confederations Cup, at the 2010 World Cup, and win the 2007 CONCACAF Gold Cup. The odds of such an outcome were incredibly small, and most likely the most important thing was that Watford chose his club as their opponent at that time and not 1,000 others. Demerit himself admits the fact that he won the lottery and that many young football players who went the right way can just get seriously injured at one moment and lose the chance to fulfill their dreams and live a difficult life with a low salary. As he says in the movie,
and they're the next best thing, and all of a sudden a year later they've played 0 games, they're injured and they don't have a contract. And then all of a sudden they're looking for new jobs. They're looking for ways to get their knees fixed because they don't have insurance. Their stability and their idea of what they had or what they were going to be has completely been taken away from them. And it is a reality.
in the 10-11 season, UEFA established a new award, the UEFA Best Player in Europe award. Messi took the first. Dealing with other awards without surprises, all awards and the most of the places in the Team of the Year were taken by Catalans. There were two versions of the Teams of the Year in 2011. The first is according to FIFA. It includes the following players. This squad surprised with the presence of Iker Casillas due to the fact that Victor Valdés and Edwin van der Sar had a better season, but it was the Real's keeper who took the place in the goals. And this is UEFA Team of the Year. The players were chosen by ordinary users on the UEFA website. He, the most controversial, is the person of Arjen Robben, who didn't win anything that year and scored a very small number of goals. The best coach in all versions was Josep Guardiola, who left no chance to his opponents, Mourinho and Ferguson, either on the football field or in this award. As previously mentioned, Lionel Messi received the first UEFA Best Player in Europe award. But this award is interesting because it doesn't cause public controversy and indignation, unlike the main individual award, the Ballon d'Or. From year to year, the prize is awarded to those who were most worthy in the opinion of many: Iniesta, Ribery, Van Dijk, Modric, Lewandowski, Jorginho. Messi and Ronaldo will not be left without this award either. On the 9th of January 2012, the Ballon d'Or 2011 was awarded. Unlike the previous year when Messi took it for a mediocre season, this time he took the award for better achievements. Only now it did not cause any controversy. You've been watching events, football players, matches of 2011. Next episode is 2012. Euro in Poland and Ukraine, football and social media. Chelsea finally won the Champions League. Messi scored 91 goals. Manchester City is the champion of England. Juventus without defeat. Mass extinction of dinosaurs in Milan. Gazprom, new sponsor of the Champions League. Zambia is the champion of Africa. And Corinthians is the world champion. Thanks for watching. Good luck.